Welcome to the Steve Kenyon Podcast, and I am thrilled that I get to hook up with an old friend. Yep, that's Jeff Metters, who is the longtime voice, of course, of the Wrangler National Finals Rodeo. Jeff, it is such a great opportunity to visit with you. Thank you for your time, and welcome. How you doing?
I'm good. You and I have such a great history. I mean, we go back a long, long ways. I mean, from the times where I'd be doing the TV, you'd be doing the radio of the NFR. You and I have seen a lot of people come and go. I think we've seen a lot of changes in the Western world. And I don't know, if we ever decide to write a book, I think we could write a pretty good one.
Yeah, we could. We could definitely write a pretty good book. Let me ask you about your plans going forward. You made an announcement the last day of the Wrangler National Finals Rodeo on Luke Branquino's podcast that you had submitted your resignation to the Cowboy Channel effective December 31st. We're now into the month of January. Geronimo Productions has been your business for a long time, and my impression, Jeff, is that you're not sitting around waiting for things to happen. You're making some things happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Can we go back to that day? That was round 10 of the NFR. What do you remember about that day?
I remember, here's what I remember. I'm going to tell you the whole story. And I don't know that I've told very many people this story, but I did something at Cowboy Christmas on Anthony Lucia's show, which was upstairs from where you were doing Luke's podcast, and the escalator up and down came out right next to the booth that you guys were doing that show, which was a Cowboy Channel's booth. And I come down after I get done with Anthony's show, and Luke is interviewing Butch Knowles to my left, and you're interviewing Trevor Brazil in another booth to my right. And I'm like, wow. Both of these guys' voices in my head at the same time. Have I sinned? It was my first thought. And then some people came up and said, did you hear that Jeff made a big announcement? And I was a little surprised that the big announcement had come up. And then I have to admit, Jeff, your wife walked up shortly after that, and I brought up your big announcement to her, and she said, he did what? So it was... You surprised a few people, I think, on that day, if I remember right.
I did, and you were aware of it. It was one of those situations where nothing negative in any way or shape was going on, but you reach a stage in your life where you realize it's time to make a change. It was one of the things where I told Patrick I'd be there 3 years. I was there 4. I'd worked for Geronimo, my company, for myself for 20 years. I've been smart enough, and at this stage of my life, I know when it's time to move. And I had informed the powers that be, before Thanksgiving, and as you just kind of got closer, it was just I just kind of threw that out there. I thought it wouldn't barely make a ripple. Made a little bit more than a ripple, but I love hearing stories like you're saying, where you go up and talk to Diana, and she's like, he did what? But that's been Diana's life now for 31 years, actually 36 if you go with how long we've been dating. So I have to keep her on her toes.
It is a difficult transition to go from being a self-employed person, I think, to working for somebody. And to be bluntly honest, one of the struggles I always faced was I've always worked for myself. But having the opportunity now to go back to being your own boss with Geronimo and the things that you're working on, Geronimo Productions, whether the NFR was on ESPN, CBS, wherever, you've been the person who's held those rights to produce the National Finals Rodeo for 2 or 3 decades now, right?
Yeah, well, as a host for some, but for about when Carl Stressman was there, Geronimo was involved with him heavily the last decade that Carl was the commissioner of the PRCA. And, Carl and I had a great relationship. It's kind of weird, but to me, it's how it should be in the cowboy world. Carl and I, for the better part of a decade, did business with a handshake. When I first took over the television, we signed a contract. We didn't sign another one until, the last year or so when he was there. And that was more on a strategic reason. We'd sit down at the beginning of the year and I'd say, hey, what do you want to do this year? And he'd say, hey, this is what we're going to do. and we'd shake hands and we would just go do it. And I never really worried about that. And I like to do business like that. I hate when attorneys are involved and it's bogged down with legal agreements. And I'm going through some of that now with some other projects that I have. It takes a lot of the fun out of it. You would think when you have a cowboy hat and you say, hey, this is what I'm going to do, then you expect people to do what they say they're going to do. They expect you to do what you're going to do. That's way more fun to me. I think I would have been a better businessman in the 50s, 60s, and 70s than dealing with something in the in the 2020s or whatever. But yeah, I mean, Geronimo was involved for a long time. To get back to your question, I keep sidetracking you. But yeah, it was a fun part. It was great to be involved with, and I have so many people. It's not so much me, and I think I get way too much more credit. It's there's a great Ben Rector song, "The Men Who Drive Me Places." It reminds me so much of the guys that have worked with me for so long. They do all the heavy lifting, and for some reason, I'm the one that seems to get all the credit for it.
Well, a lot of that happens though, and I mean, I watch you do a lot of the heavy lifting. Your guidance and your judgment, and this is a compliment, and it's friend to friend, but it's business colleague to business colleague too. Your guidance and your judgment has helped to lead a lot of people in a lot of right directions. I hope Carl Stressman watches or listens to this, because when I first took over the radio broadcast in the National Finals way back in 2008, Carl had just come on as the commissioner, and I did business with him the same way.
Yeah.
He was great to me. An awful lot of what I was able to do 15 years ago, was because Carl Stressman trusted me. And he and I become really good friends as a result of that. And I think the world of him. I share your opinion of that man completely.
Yeah, he's at AQHA now, and I'll tell you about Carl. He always leaves it better than how he found it. I mean, and I think that's what I admire about Carl the most. And he will leave AQHA better than how he found it. He left the PRCA better than how he found it, and it's just a gift that he has. I don't know. I'm not really in. My father-in-law, I lost him in October. He'd say, I'm not in the real estate business. I'm in the people business, and I really share that philosophy. I don't. Hey, we're doing Western television. We're doing rodeo, we're doing reining, we're doing cutting. But for me, it's the people. It's people like you. It's people like Carly. It's the team that you build. And you try to make it like family. And you treat everybody like family, and that's what I'm after. And when I reach a situation where I can't keep that family atmosphere, then that's when I start saying, you know what, it's time for me to do something else.
Yeah. Speaking of family, I feel like this would be a good time to bring up the name Butch Knowles.
Never heard of him.
You got, yeah. Okay, fine. Well, we'll just move right on then. You ever hang around Butch and Jeff when they're not on television? And even when they are on television, you feel like you're around an old married couple. You guys have been hooked at the hip for a long time.
I would say that we are better off television than we are on television.
I would agree with that completely, actually.
We laugh that maybe if we don't ever let us know it's our last broadcast together, because we will probably do one for the ages. I may have bourbon the whole time that we're on the air. But we have so much fun together. I mean, he's the best guy in the world. Being put in the Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame last summer meant the world to me, probably more to me than it did him, in all honesty. And we need to talk about the behind the scenes on that and the conversation. I save 2 or 3 questions for that, because I have a lot to say. But he's been so much. He's carried me a long time. Great knowledge. He's made me a bronc riding fan. There's not one end of the arena, in my opinion, that he's stronger than the other. He's one of those few broadcasters that he's as good on the time dividend end as he is on the rough stock end, just because he's a cowboy and he has done all that. But what a great person. I live for the moment when I can get the upper hand on him and pull something over on him, because that is really, really hard to do.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Butch and I have been friends for a long time. Again, he's been involved in a bunch of things that I've done too. And he's a great talent. Did he help to teach you rodeo, and did you help to teach him broadcasting? Am I being too cut and dried on that if I ask that question?
No, I think that's pretty much spot on. I think that what I brought to it was the TV mentality. My goal for rodeo and for the NFR has been to make it look like a mainstream television event, like an
Right.
NBA game, like a college football game, like an NFL game. I try not to interject too much, to be honest with you, on the rodeo side of things. Nobody cares about my opinion, and I'm not going to throw it out there. Now, I might push Joe Beaver, or I might push Joe or Butch down a road where I'm going to force them to make an opinion, whether it's something that I think I saw, or, but I do some things down that line. But yeah, I mean, I was more of the TV side of it, and I think I rubbed off on him in that way. And then on the rodeo side of it, he rubs off on me. I mean, I'll ask him a lot of things off the air or in commercial break or whatever. About, did I see, is that what I saw? But yeah, it's been a, it's been great, Steve, because we've been able to do it so long. When you
Right.
get set by somebody, 10 years, watch the NFL. I mean, they're shuffling. I was listening to Dan Patrick before I did this podcast, and they're talking about the shakeup at the Fox side of the broadcast with Tom Brady coming in, with Greg Olson moving. Those guys don't get to sit next to each other for very long. Joe
Right.
Buck and Aikman have been able to stick that out, but Butch and I've been able to do it now for 3 decades, and that makes it so easy. From my standpoint, just to know that he's there, he's a crutch. He knows we're not stepping all over each other. It's harmony, and it takes a while to sit next to somebody. You and I've done rodeos together, and
Right.
it's tough because our roles are kind of similar, I think, in what we do, but it takes a while to find that symphony where it just becomes harmony and it flows the way that you hope it'll flow.
I remember doing one together with you one time, and my whole thought in the back of my mind, and you would have lectured me to not do it this way, was okay. Now, what would Butch say right now? And I literally through that, and I
Yeah.
have no idea how I would come up with what Butch would say. Why was it so important to you to get him in the Hall of Fame?
I just think he's been the face of pro rodeo for a long time, for 3 decades. He has been the
Right.
best front man that you could ever ask for, in pro rodeo. His image, what he stands for as a person, what he delivers on television, I think has gone a little bit unheralded. I think, I think everybody takes it for granted almost, but I for sure, in terms of people that made an impact on the PRCA and pro rodeo in the time that I have been there, he has made an impact in a different way, on par with the Ty Murray, on par with the Trevor Brazil, on par with a Billy Epbauer, because he's been the voice of it. As you think back on those guys, that's the voice that you hear, and he has done it in such an admirable cowboy way that I felt it was really important for him to get that recognition.
I
He didn't like
think of
it.
him as
He didn't
our
like
John
it.
Madden.
Yeah, absolutely. He didn't like
Yeah.
it. I mean, you would have thought, I don't know, you would have thought you kicked his blue heeler or whatever when I think you got the news that he was going to go in the Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame. He's fine. We're in Calgary last summer. We're doing Calgary, and
Right.
and Mary's up there, his wife, and we're talking about it, and he still is so reluctant. They have the big deal on Friday night. He didn't want to go. He told Kent Sturman, "I'm not going to make it. I got to do Calgary." And I think the only reason that he actually really went was because he became concerned that if he had flight issues, because I'd had major flight issues getting to Calgary, that he would actually miss the induction. So, but after it was all said and done, he was like, "I'm really glad that I went." And Mary talked about the evolution of getting the news. It's kind of like what a death. You go through all those stages of learning to deal with it. And finally by the end, he had realized that this is an honor. And I was telling him, because I'm a nice guy, I like to be an encourager, as you know. I said, you need to go down there, embrace it, enjoy it, because the next time this many people get together to honor you, you're going to be dead, and I'm going to be the guy behind the microphone. So you need to go take it all in while you can. So yeah.
Oh, that's funny. You actually had to get a little creative on the Calgary broadcast last year because you lost both Butch and Luke Branquino to
Yeah,
the Hall of Fame
absolutely. Yeah.
that weekend.
And I had fun. I had Strauss Milan, who I wouldn't want to have to fight straws over the last donut, because I'm not saying because of his weight. I'm just saying he's a big, stout guy, and I
Yeah.
wouldn't stand a chance. And what a great character he is, and did a
Yeah.
super job in the steer wrestling. And then it was fun to sit with Roddy Hay. Rod was the saddle bronc riding analyst, and Dawson won the last 4 rounds to win, kind of following his dad's footsteps to win the Calgary Stampede. So it was so much fun to get a chance to sit next to Roddy and watch Dawson, do what he does. Because I was there for most of Roddy's 20 NFRs, and I've been there for a few Calgary Stampedes for him too. But he's such a character. Both those guys are, and that just makes it so much fun.
Jeff, I have a question that you probably can't answer, but people have asked me on multiple occasions at events that I've been to over the last month. And the question is, will we see Jeff and Butch together again at the NFR someday?
Man, I wish I knew the answer to that.
Yeah.
You sound like Butch Knowles. But I don't know, Steve. I really don't know. And you'll say, hey, did you take that into consideration? When you made the decisions that you made, and the answer to that is absolutely. I did. I'm optimistic that by come December, I'll be back there next to Butch. But there's some things I really need to do. I shot a reality show with Taylor Sheridan, 10 Nights in Las Vegas, over what happens in Las Vegas. And we shot it this last December, and it's incredible. From hanging out with Cody Johnson and his guys before they go on stage for a big concert, to the highs and lows of what we saw in Thomas and Mack, to how Las Vegas goes from Sin City to Cowboy Town. And I think for me, at this stage, Steve, for me, to take the sport where it needs to be, to take it to the next level, it has to be with something like that, which is like a Drive to Survive on Netflix, or a Hard Knocks on HBO. Those stories have to be told to take this outside of the choir, the church that we have here in the cowboy world. It's that Yellowstone group, the people that probably would put their hat on backwards, but they watch Yellowstone. They went and bought a hat because they want to be like John Dutton. Yeah. Those are the people that need to hear the stories of these athletes. And as well as I do, they're the toughest athletes in the world. They're not getting paid millions of dollars. They get their ass bucked off. They're beat up, and they have to go get in that truck, and they got to go drive however far to get to the next rodeo. If you read the job description for a timed event cowboy and pro rodeo, I can't believe there's more than 5 of them. Hey, you gotta buy a horse for $1 gazillion. You need an amazing truck, an incredible trailer. You need to put diesel in it. You got to haul it all over creation, and you might win something, and you might not.
Yeah.
And I don't know who goes, yep, I'm signing up for that. It's kind of like those guys that were invited to take go on a trip to Antarctica, back in the 1800s. You're probably going to die, but a gazillion of them signed up anyway. But I think when you start telling the stories like that to America that doesn't really know, because you watch a rodeo, as well as I do, they're going to watch the NFR. 120 athletes come and go in about 2 hours. You don't see their faces. You don't hear their stories. It happens so fast. But back to your question, for me, that's more important now than to sit and do the National Finals Rodeo. I've done that for 30 years. Do I love it? It's my favorite thing in the world. But I feel like right now, to take the sport to the next level, I got to create a series like 10 Nights and get it sold. And Taylor Sheridan's the guy that can get it out there in a completely different venue on much different network. And I think that will change the game, maybe more than anything I've done or had a chance to be a part of in my career.
You had cameras all over the NFR.
We did
while it was going on. You and Taylor. I think I've met Taylor Sheridan once, and it was just a brief conversation. But his potential impact on all of this, working with you, could be very interesting. I think, couldn't it?
I think so. I mean, I think he's created an amazing tidal wave, with Yellowstone, and then he comes along with 1883 and 1923. And he's doing more. Bought the 4-6s Ranch, going to create a series around that. You just want to tuck in there, with that. You want to come up with, and he and I have been talking about this 10 Nights project since 2018. I thought it would probably happen in 2020, but COVID hits.
Right.
I came to, the Cowboy Channel had acquired all the rights to Pro Rodeo. I figured 2019 was my last NFR. To be honest with you, I came down to Fort Worth just to see what it was going to be like, to have some conversations. But in my mind, in 2020, that was the year I would be all in on 10 nights in Vegas, and that was going to be my focus. COVID hit, things go a couple of different ways, and now we're sitting here in late January in 2024. The world's changed a lot, but finally, I'm kind of getting back to that 10 nights project.
Yeah. Are there some other big projects you're working on? I mean, I I'm being nosy, Jeff, and there's some things that you might want to talk about. You might not want to talk about anything, but working on these things now, um, are there other things that you're working on that you're hoping to get out there? How do you find distribution? How do you find places to put all these things? Is being affiliated with Taylor Sheridan a big deal in all of that? I threw a lot of stuff into one question there, but I think you know where I'm going.
Yeah, distribution is the thing. That is the tricky part. And as I sat there in 2018, I had a concept that I thought was a winner, a winner. And so you look at how am I going to be able to get this out there? And I've had connections. I've made different pitches to different networks on other projects on some things. But I felt like Taylor was the easy road or the almost the sure bet. And he has a reality show called The Last Cowboy, which is around the reining world that is about these reigners. And so there's so many of those reigners because of my years of doing AQHA stuff. I knew all of them, Craig and Ginger Schmershel, and things like that. So I talked to Ginger. I was like, hey, what kind of a guy's Taylor? She's a great guy, and I said, I really feel like I need you to make an introduction to me with him. And maybe that's the way that I go. So she set that up in the fall of 18, and I went down and sat with him. And he's a busy guy. He's even busier now. It'd be so much harder, I think, to get in the door and create a relationship with him. And I'm really specific on 10 nights. This is what it is. And I don't have a lot of variation in it. So, Taylor Washington goes, we could do this and we could do that and we could do this. And I was like, no, no, this is what it is. And so he goes, and we had a conversation. He goes, send me a copy. And then he's like, I think you're right. I think you're right. And so for me, that's kind of how I got my foot in the door with him. We have some spinoff ideas, I think, as we get 10 nights rolling. I have some other stuff that I've done, that now that I'm back working Geronimo full time, I've dusted those off. And I'll probably throw them at Taylor and say, you see a place for this. And if he says no, I have enough connections now that, I will take those to the networks where I think they fit, be it Discovery, right. or something like that. But I would kind of like to leave it all umbrellaed under Bosque Ranch and Studio 101. But you kind of, there's some give and take there, but I think it's worth my while. I don't care about having the credit for it. All I care about is having the budget and the ability to go out there and create the series that I think are game changing for the industry. I'm kind of like an old actor. I mean, I'm just like, hey, I did a couple movies, and now I'm content moving behind the scenes if that's what I need to do.
Professional rodeo and the Western way of life in general has experienced a significant amount of growth over the last 4 or 5 years for a lot of reasons. Cowboy Channel being one of them, Taylor Sheridan, certainly the Yellowstone effect being one of them. I'm excited to hear you talking about, okay, what's next? What's the next step? How do we advance this beyond where we've already gotten? We've got a lot of events that are being produced in front of sold out arenas year after year after year. Television ratings, I think, were always pretty good on the NFR. But I'm excited to hear you talking about what's next.
Yeah, and I think hats off to Patrick Gotch. What an amazing vision. In all the years, and I'm embarrassed to say that I never dreamed we'd have our own Cowboy ESPN,
Right.
That was a bold vision. He put his money where his mouth is, and created something that I don't think anybody else had maybe the wherewithal to do. Absolutely unbelievable. But I also think that when you create something, a couple of these series that are like the Full Swing and Drive to Survive and Hard Knocks, I think that will dramatically affect the bottom line of the Cowboy Channel. Because now, I mean, if you look at what Full Swing's done for the PGA Tour and ratings at their events, you look at what Drive to Survive has done for Formula One racing. I mean, I have friends like Jay Winborn, who runs the NCHA. His wife, if you ask her before Drive to Survive what F1 was, she wouldn't have a clue. She got watching Drive to Survive. She doesn't miss an F1 race. You know, I think you create this amazing fan base, and it all comes back to the Cowboy Channel. You know, I think what it would do for the Cowboy Channel is almost immeasurable, and what it'll do for the Western industry will help us keep that wave going. You know, that we've got with Yellowstone and those kind of events. I think it's a really important piece of the puzzle, and I think that's definitely the one that's missing.
People are watching and listening to this, Jeff, and before we run out of time, they're thinking to themselves, okay, when do we get to see all this? How long does it take to produce? How long does it take to put it all together?
We're right in the middle of 10 nights right now, and we'll probably have between now and the first part of March between 3 and 5 episodes done. And I think for Taylor, it's like, give me the teaser, give me that first episode, and let's see if we can get this thing sold. So it's a major importance to him, but it's really important to me because I'm ready to get something out there, you know, and try and get it sold and get a network set, and then find ways to promote it.
Yeah. Jeff Metters has been the face and voice. I'm just going to say it. He's too humble to say it. I'm going to. He and Butch Knowles have been the face and voice for television fans of the National Finals Rodeo for 3 decades now. Jeff has had a huge impact on professional rodeo. He's too humble to say it. I'm going to. And the next step is underway. And, it's funny. I read a bio, Jeff, of your induction in 2016, I think it was, into the Western Heritage Museum in Oklahoma City. And it starts this way. It says, you've heard it said that life is what happens to you while you're making other plans. And that's the way they headed off your bio for that induction into the Hall of Fame in Oklahoma City back in 2016. I think that still probably fits, doesn't it?
It does, absolutely. When I decided what I was going to be in life when I was a junior in high school.
Yeah.
A guy named Chris Lincoln came and spoke at my all sports banquet, and I was like, he was the sports director at the ABC station in Tulsa, and I was like, I want Chris's job. I majored in it day one in college. Actually, at one time, I had a chance to get that job, and contractually, I just couldn't move over there. But I thought I would be a sportscaster in, Tulsa, then move on to an Indianapolis or Chicago, yeah. And doing that kind of stuff. And a funny thing, happened on the way to the theater. So it was a nice change, and for me, it started out subtle, Steve. Where I started doing stuff on ESPN in 1988. I did rodeo in 1991. I got away from it in 2000, 2001 because I wasn't that I didn't want to do rodeo. It was I wanted to do more live television. So I kind of ventured over and did thoroughbred racing on ESPN, for a couple of years. But it became really apparent to me probably by the late 90s. I never wanted to go back to local television again. I wanted to settle in. You know how it is in the Western world, in the rodeo world. People make you feel so at home. They make you feel so at home. I mean, you might have a few rodeo athletes that for some reason you don't get along with, but I can only think of one rodeo athlete that won't return my phone call, and it's not anything that I did, and I have no idea why, but he might be the head of the most successful family, and for some reason he's busy and has other things going. But they treat you like one of your own, one of their own, and it's just so much fun. And as well as I do. I mean, it's once you kind of settle in, why would you want to go anywhere else? I can't stand, like LeBron James wouldn't text me during the game saying, "Hey, this is about what's going to happen." Cody O would text me all the time before the NFR started or after. I mean, they reach out. You're one of them. and they're the kind of guys you want to hang out with. I've made the joke many times. I would never let my daughters date any rodeo cowboys, but they're the kind of guys you want to be in a foxhole with if you're going to
Yeah.
war. That's for sure. The only one I would do that was Billy Epauer, and then but Billy's married. And I don't think Holly would appreciate that. So.
Yeah. But it is a great group. There are things about this industry that are addictive. And you and I talked a lot behind the scenes about my love for announcing, and it's a thing that I plan to continue to do for a very long time, hopefully, as rodeo committees continue to give me the opportunity. There are people and places and things in this industry that are just, once you get your foot in the door with them, it's hard to give them up. And
oh my gosh, so much fun.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question.
What?
Because you and I have kind of, we're different in a lot of ways, but we're very similar, I think, in a lot of ways too. So one of the things that maybe I didn't really factor in as I made this latest decision in my career, I think it's something that maybe you've wrestled with too. You and I are used to having a national sounding board. We're used to being on national television, whether we're talking about what's happened. It's been a sounding board for us, but we spent years together. I think in the Western eye, the public eye. Now,
Right.
as you kind of step away from Cowboy Channel, you're not on there on a regular basis. You were on there more than me. How do you stay relevant in the industry? Do you worry about people kind of forgetting maybe who you are and what you're doing?
Somebody told me the other day that they thought I needed to get back on television. And
I think you need to be back on TV, but keep going.
Well, here's my thought, Jeff. And remember that I come at this with a love and a background. I got my first radio job when I was 17 years old, which was, I hate to admit my age, 46 years ago. I come at this with a real love for radio. And that's what I did for you. The first few times that I remember, you and I were in Rapid City, South Dakota one time. It was the first year of the Champions Challenge events. You were actually running a camera, and it was 10 degrees below zero outside. And I grabbed you, and you came over and did a little bit on my radio broadcast that night from that Champions Challenge event. I think it was the first time I ever saw Sage Kimsey. If I remember right, Sage and J.W. Harris split it, and they had a coin flip or something to see who got the buckle in the arena. But
shame that we've never heard anything else from either one of those guys, but keep going.
Yeah, I mean, just they both just disappeared.
They did. It could have been something.
Yeah, they could have been. But to answer your question, I am thrilled to have the opportunity to try to build a podcast, to try to build radio stuff. Next Gen Rodeo reached out to me. We're creating Next Gen Rodeo Media. We did. You gave me a hard time on the December the 10th at the NFR because I went on our show on Next Gen and announced your announcement of resignation. And I think I kind of I wasn't trying to stir the pot, but it got a little bit of attention.
Gosh, so many people saw that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So the answer to your question is, yeah, I would take advantage of the opportunity if it ever came up again, but I'm not going to sit around and wait for it. I can talk to, I was in Red Bluff, California on Saturday night in an arena that seats about 3,000 people with standing room for, I think they had 5,000 people in a 3,000 seat arena. And I had a chance for 2.5 hours to tell them the story of the bull riding industry and the Western way of life and the sport that I love. And to me, that is, to answer your question, that opportunity, as long as I can continue to do a good job and people continue to hire me, it's going to mean a lot to me. Doing things like this show, I'm happy with that. I can do that all day. I love interviewing people. I think it's the thing that I'm the best at, that and announcing rodeos. And so, does that answer your question? I would take the opportunity if it ever came up again, but I'm also intent on building something that I can put my stamp on in the podcasting world, in the radio show world, in the announcing world, and maybe some other things as I continue to learn social media, which I still am really bad at as time goes by. And so we'll see where this all goes.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. There are so many opportunities out there now.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a studio right back here that I just need to set up, start creating different social media content, doing some different things.
Right.
And I'm excited to do that. I'm just up to here with 10 nights trying to get that ready to go. I mean, I can do a Western roundup, Western sports roundup show, just right here. I mean, there are a couple of shows that I would love to have done on Cowboy Channel. Didn't really have the time or whatever to deal with, but more of and I think, like your podcast, I watch Dan Patrick just about every day, but we should have created a podcast for you like that, where it aired live on rural radio on the Cowboy Channel, and we did it in the studio right there. I'd like to do a complete opinion show. I'd love to do an opinion show on everything that's going on in the Western world. Byron Walker. I mean, he's always, he loves
Byron's
to stir the pot. There's so many things that you could do down that line. I think it'd be fun. So I got that out of your answer. That's what I got. That there's a lot of ways in social media. There's a lot of outlets now to generate content and stay relevant. And then you reminded me that I couldn't. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say during the National Finals Rodeo, 4 words from Kai Hamilton created the single most viral video interview I've ever had in my life. We had, my Facebook pages all by themselves had over 3 million interactions during the National Finals Rodeo. One interview I did with Kai and his expression of "don't be a pansy," which isn't exactly what he said, but it was close. We reached a ton of people with that. People want to, I think people are hungry for all of the stories that we have an opportunity to tell. You and I both have opportunities now to reach out on our own and to try to tell those stories in the way that we see fit.
Yeah. And a little more raw, not so, it doesn't have to be family friendly television or family friendly media. Like you're just touching on with Kai and so much stuff that we shot in Vegas, on 10 nights is way more raw, than it gets past the we're all friends persona, a little bit. And I think that's what's missing, I think, too, Steve, in some aspect is we got to be real, because these guys, who they are, sell themselves. But the other thing I got out of it is you and I are so different in one area. If you ask me if I wanted to come announce a rodeo, I would be like, let me think about it for a second. Hell no. There's no way. I'm used to talking from when it fades up from black and it fades to black. I'm not used to talking from before the grand entry starts until well after the last bull rider leaves I was like, not a chance. And radio, you have that gift of gab. You're so comfortable sitting down and hey, I'm going to do an hour, on radio. And even if you might have one guest or whatever, you'd be totally fine with it. But I marvel at you guys that announce rodeos and do it as amazingly as you guys do it. And I'm really grateful that it's not me. I don't have that gift of gab. I'm not that chatty, for the most part.
The fun thing about it is the interaction with the audience and the interaction with contestants live right there in the moment. And that to me is, I talked to one of my favorite rodeos to announce, the rodeo committee, from the gentleman, Don Gill, who puts on the rodeo in Gooding, Idaho this morning. Come out there sometime, Jeff, if you get a chance to sit in the beer worthy section. It's the week after the Farm City Pro Rodeo in Hermiston, Oregon, that I had a chance to do for the first time last year. When you get a chance to interact with audiences and see them, I understand why musicians fall in love with standing on a stage, or comedians, because when you can feel like something you have done, said, a point that you've tried to make, a joke you've tried to tell, has an impact on people at that moment, it's a rush. It's a real rush for me, anyway. I don't know if the rest of my colleagues in the announcing world say the same thing, but for me, that's a rush.
Yeah, I've emceed banquets. I've done different things where, you literally have that live audience. And when we're doing stuff at the Cowboy Channel, it's just the eye that never blinks. There is no whether you said something that you think is funny, whether it's funny or not, you really don't know.
Yeah. That opportunity, the Cowboy Channel opportunity, you asked me if I'd go back on TV again someday. Yeah, I would. Cowboy Channel opportunity gave me a platform, and to this day, I'm flattered that people come up and say, we watch. Every once in a while I get people come up and say, I watch you every day. Well, no, not since July. But I'm flattered at the people who are and were fans, and that means a lot to me. Who knows what the future holds? We'll see.
No, don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I am a firm believer, and I'm trying to think the word that my wife has for me. Pollyanna. You're a Pollyanna, and I call her Doom. I mean, you can give. I don't care what the situation is that you can throw out there. She sees what can possibly go wrong.
Yeah.
I only see what can possibly go right, and I think the best is still yet to come. And I'm sitting here. I'm not the youngest chicken in the barnyard anymore, but I still think, I mean, for the next 10, 12 years, I'm going to strive to make as big an impact as I ever have in the Western world.
I think that's a good place to wrap this up. Jeff, I appreciate your time so much. Please do me a favor and please keep me in the loop on your projects as they come together, and when you get closer to releasing, the 10 nights and any of the other things that you're up to. And we need to just stay in touch, but please make sure you keep me in that loop so I can help to tell the world about it when it gets to that point.
I will. I would like to do another podcast with you again soon, but
Okay.
Here's the deal. I want to interview you.
Okay.
So I want to flip-flop it. So we'll do a podcast, but I get to ask the questions and I get to run me. I just want to, I got to put all the places in the toys in the sandbox where they need to go. I think it'd be better that the next one, it'll be a podcast with me, but I get to do I get to ask all the questions.
The Steve Kenyon podcast hosted by Jeff Metters. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, that's exactly what it is. Yeah. That's
all right. You're not going to bring Butch in as a guest host or anything, are you?
You never can tell. You never can tell.
Makes me a little nervous. We will at a time and place of your convenience, we will make that happen, Jeff. How's that?
And if Butch is a part of it, it just depends on the technology that's invaded Hefner, Oregon. So
good point.
I had to send him last time I talked to him, I sent him a telegram, I think. So we'll go from there.
Good point. Jeff Metters, it's such a pleasure. Geronimo Productions, should folks be keeping an eye on anything on social media or anything like that, or are you to that point yet with some of these things?
I'm the worst. I gotta rally my daughter and get her to take over. When she usually does a hostile takeover of my social media, I tend to post like next to nothing. So, and you know what, you're probably like me. Like my friends stay maxed on Facebook, and I might know 10% of them.
Right.
And my wife was like, why do you? I said, you know what? I get an inside glimpse to so many people who are so nice in the Western world. I get a glimpse into their life. Hey, I lost my dad. Hey, look at my kid just did this. It's to me, it's like I'm a voyeur almost, where I'm just peeking in to the lives of people that I really don't even know, but I get to experience the highs and lows that they have every day. And that's the attraction to social media for me, not putting something out boring about me, but I'll try to do better.
You got it. Jeff Metters,
I might post something on my corgi.
Okay.
I might post something on my corgi. That'd be about it.
It's not like I've never posted a picture of a dachshund, so I understand. Jeff, It's such a pleasure. Stay in touch, my friend.
Steve, I love you. Talk to you soon.
Jeff Metters joining us on the Steve Kenyon Podcast.